Greetings, peace. All right, before we get started, obviously I'd like to quickly just go through some brief announcements before I begin, so I don't got to address at the end of the videos. Mainly in reference to spiritual consultations or spiritual readings. I'd like to get this out of the way in the video, so you don't, in the beginning of the video, so again, you don't have to email me and ask me how does a consultation or a reading work. I'm going to give you that information right here in the beginning of the video. The consultation or the reading, and understand they could be two different things. Especially if you're focusing on a specific area, you could. Some people just use it as a personal build session. They got specific questions they want to ask. It can be used for that. If you want to focus on specific areas in your life, finance, relationship, money, spirituality, how to work certain spiritual systems, whatever you want, you completely dictate the flow of how the consultation goes. It lasts up to a maximum of 1 hour. I charge $52 to do it. It can either be done in person. If you can't get to me in person, face to face, it can be done via social media platform. Google Hangouts is what I prefer. It can also be done on the IMO app, Skype, etc. It can be paid either via PayPal or by a credit or debit card over the phone before we start the reading. So if you are interested in receiving a consultation, you can contact me at the email khnum19@gmail.com. I don't put testimonials or any of that bullshit up because my work speaks for itself. I don't feel the need to do that. Those that know me and have been working with me over the years know it's beneficial for them, and it gives them the tools and the guidance that they need to get their stuff together. Not that myself or anybody else is doing it for them. They do the work themselves, and that's what this path is about, a path of self-mastery, not somebody doing it for you. It don't mean you can't consult and get advice, read, study, etc. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to apply, the spiritual system or the spiritual path to better yourself. All right, having said that, so again, you can hit me up for that at khnum19@gmail.com. That's khnum19@gmail.com. So what I want to talk about today, because this topic came up, and I ran into a couple of brothers yesterday, the day before this video, and we got to talking. We were talking about Freemasonry, the occult, Baphomet, its connection into consciousness, quote unquote, conscious circles, conscious community. Now, I'm doing this video because, unfortunately, the brothers that I was talking to yesterday profess to be extremely conscious or spiritual, or awoke was a term that one of the brothers used, that they're woke. But I find that there's still an abundance of ignorance plaguing people's minds, because on this particular subject, they have no idea what they're talking about. And let me give you an example of what came up in this conversation. There's some in the conscious community that still have this stance on Freemasonry or Masonry in general as it being devil worship, and that the Masons secretly worship the devil, and they worship Baphomet in the lodge, and the Knights of Templar worship Baphomet secretly in the lodge. This is the biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my entire life, and I've addressed this before in the past, but I'm going to go a little bit in depth with it today. This is nothing further than the truth. And people that make these statements, obviously you can tell, have never set foot in a Masonic lodge a day in their life. That's the problem. Okay? They've never set foot a day in their life in a Masonic lodge, never really studied Masonry. All they do is watch YouTube videos, lectures and videos, and read books from other people's interpretations and opinions that never walked through a Masonic lodge. Now, what I'm about to do is, I don't usually do this because I don't feel it necessary, but I want people to understand. I'm going to show you and prove to you that this is pure myth and holds no substance. People will make statement that Masons worship the devil. And when this topic came up, I asked, well, what evidence supports that? So this individual got to quoting and referring to me to a few YouTube videos. I said, well, hold on. I said, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I said, I'm asking you, what evidence have you experienced yourself to confirm that? My first question was, first and foremost, are you a Mason, or have you ever been a Mason or part of any occult or esoterical or fraternal order? And the answer was no. So now we have a problem. But let me do this, and I don't usually do this because I don't feel the need to, but apparently some people still don't get it. And I'll go in circles and let people talk, and I don't really have to or feel the need to identify. Yes, I am a Master Mason, was raised in a Masonic lodge. And I'm not just going to say it, I'm going to show the proof. You look right here, just so people can see. Okay? That's my certificate of being raised in the Grand Lodge in Florida. Okay? Up here, and again, this is just for the record, that's my certificate for being initiated in the Templar Order, OTO. Okay? Okay? And again, I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this, because we got some ignorant ass people out here. And then this right here is my certificate for being raised in the Rosicrucian Order. Okay? So let me state for the record, and I'm not showing you this because I'm trying to toot my own horn. That's not why I'm showing you this, because sometimes people, this is about showing and proving, and sometimes people talk shit and don't know what they're talking about. So I want to make this clear. Before I begin to talk, I'm a Master Mason raised in the Grand Lodge of Florida. That's why I showed you that certificate. I've been raised in the Templar Lodge. I am a 10th degree Rosicrucian. Okay? Having said that, when somebody is talking to me and never went through any of those degrees or initiations or rites, this is why I'm bringing it up. I'm not bringing it up because I'm trying to show it doesn't make me any better than anybody else. But what it does make me is aware and not ignorant. Because people will talk about these orders as if they went through them. Same thing with the Rosicrucian Order. People come up with these mythological terms. For an example, they will say, and this is other proof, you can't get this. This is not a book you get in the store. You get this if you're raised up. See that? The Florida Masonic Monitor. See that? Florida Masonic Code. You don't get this in a store. You can't buy this. You get this when you're raised up in a lodge. I bring this up along with this, see this? Because this was a topic that came up. Scottish Rite Masonry, the brother told me, deals with devil worship. That's what I was told. See this here? This is volume 2, 33 degrees. Okay? Broken down into 2 volumes. And also, part of this order here. See this? Order of the Eastern Star. Okay. My whole point is, show me in any of these books, show me anywhere. Annie, you can flip through this book. You show me anywhere in these books, in these degrees, in these rituals, where there's devil worship and the worship of Baphomet. You can go through all of them. It's nowhere in these books. None of these degrees, none of these initiations in any of these books. And we got to do it kindergarten style today, because I usually don't do this. But I just figured let's take a kindergarten style so we can show and prove, so people can go research for themselves. I'm just flipping through them quick because we'll be here all day talking about this. Okay? Nowhere, if you belong to a Grand Lodge of your state, in your regional monitor and your ritual book, you show me in any of these books where there's satanic or devil worship. Anybody that makes that statement has never set foot a day of their life in a Masonic lodge, in a Templar lodge, in a Rosicrucian temple. They've never set foot or walked. And I said this, you can go research this, I don't care. Some people might get mad. When you read the Metu Neter, there's exact degrees in the temple degrees of the Rosicrucian order that brother put in his book. Word verbatim. I mentioned that before. Okay? And mainly the 6th temple degree. Okay, you can find word verbatim in that book. But yet, these are the same individuals that are claiming that Masonry and the Rosicrucian, this is all European stuff. But see, I mentioned before in the past, they'll take stuff from other areas that they know conscious people won't look for. You would never know that, because they know the average conscious person is not raised up in the temple degrees of the Rosicrucian order. So I can take something from somewhere, it sounds heavy and deep, but I can make it sound like it's my own, and then present it like I'm dealing with some high science. Okay? So we got to cut this bullshit out, being conscious, and watching the propaganda videos, unfortunately, here on YouTube and other social media platforms. So when you come to me and say that Masonry or Masons worship Satan, the devil, and Baphomet, and they think Baphomet is the devil, and we're going to go over that again, because obviously that's not the case. That's ignorant too. Show me. Show and prove. Don't just give me something you heard or read somewhere, because I can show and prove. None of that stuff takes place in any Masonic, Templar, or Rosicrucian lodge. Doesn't happen. Okay? It's the biggest bullshit story and myth. Now, if you were awoke and conscious, like this brother claimed to be, okay, when you want to take it back to Africa and Egypt, here's a book I recommend. It's one of the first books I've ever read on the origins of Masonry. Actually, one of the books that actually influenced and inspired me to join the Masonic Lodge years back. Zachary P. Gramillion. Some of you might be familiar with this book. This is called African Origins of Freemasonry. See this book right here? Okay? The origins of Masonry, okay? Anybody that knows and studies knows that it goes back to ancient Egypt, okay? And Zachary P. Gramillion is one of the few that taps into that. When you're looking at the mainstream Masonic lodge that are more European or European influenced, they have just taken these degrees and kind of watered them down to fit and attune them to their particular liking, their particular traditions, etc. They've just replaced and changed it and altered it to fit what they're doing. When you look for an example at the Entered Apprentice Fellowcraft and Master Mason degree, whether you go into a Prince Hall Lodge, whether you go into a Free and Accepted Lodge, Ancient Free and Accepted Masonic Lodge, International, the foundation and the basis is the same. Now, there might be some things particular that are not identical, but for the most part, the core essence of the degrees and the rituals are the same. When you go back into ancient Egypt and you look at a lot of the rituals, when you read some of the Egyptian texts, you'll see where a lot of these things came from. But my question is, because the topic that came up, where does this satanic Baphomet thing come in that everybody that doesn't understand shit about Masonry or the occult makes the connection? Because I heard they do all type of sexual acts and sexual perversions and they worship Baphomet. And first of all, Baphomet is not an actual deity. For anybody that really knows what Baphomet represents, it's an occult symbol. We've talked about this a multitude of times, but this came up yesterday's conversation, so I'm going to go ahead and revisit this. Baphomet, anybody that understands what Baphomet is and it represents, they don't worship it. Anybody in the occult doesn't worship Baphomet as some deity that they bow down and prostrate and pray to. If you do that, then you're not an occultist. You don't know the real hidden meaning of what Baphomet represents. If you go into Alfonso Levi's definition of it, which most people are familiar with, and I'm going to refer you to something basic that you can look up in Levi's definition of it, it simply is a representation of that harmony and balancement within the adept. Real simple. As I said before, when you look at the symbol and what it represents, what it's depicting, it's androgynous, number one. It's representing the masculine and the feminine energies, okay? Because you have the goat face of the man, you have the androgynous breasts of a female, you have the four elements represented on Baphomet: earth, wind, air, fire, water, the scales representing the water. You have where the pineal or the third eye or the crown, and right by the crown chakra you have the flame extending from the head representing the fire element. You have the as above, so below, right? Okay, you have as above, so below. You have a representation of harmony, masculine, feminine energy, balancement, all of this working in unison. This is what a true adept is trying to obtain on this path. That's why I did a video a while back called Start Doing the Work, Stop Talking, and Become a Baphomet. Because Baphomet represents that totality, equilibrium, balance. That's why it's one of the most popular occult symbols. An occultist knows how to manipulate that symbol and make it work for them. They know how to utilize the energies that are emitted from that symbol and make it work for them. They don't worship it. It's not a literal thing. If anybody is on this path knows, we don't worship anything or anybody. That's one of the worst things you can do on this path, is give reverence, homage, and worship to something outside of yourself. So that's an illusion. We got to cut that shit out. Baphomet is an occult symbol. That's what it represents. That's what one can focus on in their meditations and their visualizations, the symbology of it. Okay? So the thing is, how people connected that to the Freemasonic order is the propagated myth for years that the Knights Templar, who most have a connection to the Freemasonic order or Masonry, secretly worship Baphomet in their temple. Like there's some Baphomet monster in some little pit in the temple that comes out, and then Knights of Templar bow down and worship them. This is again, my question to people that say that: if you're not a Knights Templar, you're not in the lodge, and you haven't witnessed it, how do you know it's true? Because you read it somewhere? Because somebody wrote it somewhere? So you're taking somebody else's interpretation of it, and you're believing something that you yourself haven't confirmed. So if they told you they was Santa Claus, an incarnation of Santa Claus, you would have to believe that too, I guess, without proving it. Now, again, I'm saying this from a perspective of being in that and initiated in it. And even though I'm not as active today in those orders that I used to be years ago, I still am current, still keep my status. So I still frequently talk and dialogue with people that are Masons, and occasionally attend here and there when I can, any of these orders that I'm talking about. And that's to stay connected, because a real god or a goddess is able to study and master everything. See, this is the shit that kills me when people claim to be a god or a goddess and they're conscious and quote unquote woke. But how woke are you when your knowledge is limited? When you can't show and prove your knowledge, your knowledge, your wisdom, your understanding. You can't show and prove it. So if your knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is backed up by your opinions and your faith and your beliefs, then it's not real knowledge. You understand? That's the difference between somebody on this path that says they're a god and a goddess, okay, because this path is so misunderstood. This is the real path of, quote unquote, if you want to use the term, Kemetic consciousness. Because we strip away all the bullshit and the illusions. We strip away all the fictitious beliefs, myths, and mythology. You understand? And we give it to you raw deal. And what I'm trying to say is, anybody that comes, look, and I'm not saying this to say anybody or encouraging anybody like they have to go join a Masonic lodge or any of these orders. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, and you hear us say this on the radio show in the introduction, what I am saying, if you're going to teach on it, know what you're talking about. Because know there are many gods and real goddesses watching and observing, and know that you're full of shit and you don't know what you're talking about. That you're into this sci-fi conspiracy theory knowledge that you're getting off of social media platforms. That's my whole point. Because again, as I said, show me in any of these books, any of these ritual books, any of them, show me where there's a rite where any Mason worships the devil or Baphomet. Show me. You can't. And all I'm saying is show and prove. Don't just make statements. You can't be a god or goddess and accept things on face value. So if you're just accepting statements and shit people saying with no proof or no facts, then that's an issue. It's an issue in the sense that you have no clue what you're talking about. And again, look, I mentioned, look, as I say, I go in circles and I listen to people talking. Sometimes you can learn from a fool. Sometimes you learn a lot by just being silent, and I'll do that. And I don't have to introduce myself in certain ciphers or circles that I'm building, and I gotta announce what it is I know, what I've been initiated, and what I've been through. Sometimes you keep that knowledge to yourself, and you humble yourself out. You just listen, and you learn from somebody's ignorance, because a fool, when he or she is spitting informations and nobody is responding to them, that's a green light to keep talking nonsense, because they've gauged it as if that person is not conscious or aware of the scheme or the trick knowledge or the false lies that they're telling. So I just let a fool keep talking till they're done, like yesterday. And then when they're done and they can't retract any of their statements, then I'll go back and revisit what they say. Then we'll build. And if need be, then I'll reveal knowledge of self and the conscious levels that I've been exposed to, etc., if need be. See, this is how you really build and teach. This is how you really approach situations and scenarios. You know, as I said before, and those that know me for the last 20 plus years know, I just started this YouTube thing a few years ago, right? People say, get on the YouTube, it's the thing, social media. And as I said before in the past, people that know me, I'm more of an older school method approach. I like dealing with people. I like the conversation, talking, the interaction with actual human people. As I said before, the upside of the social media platforms is great because you can reach a multitude of people, simultaneous, where you ain't able to do that, person to person. You're limited, and that's a beautiful thing. But I think the human interaction in the whole process is kind of lost. So those that know, like I said, I just started doing this a few years back. Okay. For that purpose, to reach people and correct things. I'm not a YouTube scholar and a social media. I don't get my information from Wikipedia and websites only. And again, I'm not saying there's ain't nothing wrong with going on the internet and doing research, because you have to do your research to know, your information. But what I'm trying to say is, not everything you're going to research and every piece of information you read is accurate. Especially on this topic that we're talking about today. Because, as I said before in the past, when you Google stuff you pull up on the internet about the Rosicrucian order, any of these occult orders, you're going to get the face value stuff and mostly other people's opinions. And as I said before, if you're going to teach on this stuff, the best way is I would encourage you to gain the experience and get initiated, because then you know what you're talking about. And then you can go in there and correct it as a god or a goddess. You could take that knowledge, and now you could break down if you're saying that, they took this from Egypt and this is how they changed it. Well, how are you going to know that unless you ain't been through it, experienced it, studied it, mastered it? You understand what I'm saying? This is the thing. This is the shit that I'm talking about. So your only basis is the speculation knowledge that you got. See, there's a term in masonry and in occult and esoteric orders. You're either speculative or you're operative. We got a lot of speculative Masonic scholars out here. They speculate. You understand? They think they know what they're talking about because they've read a few books. First and foremost, me, being raised up a Master Mason, I can't have a conversation with you and you're making definitive statements about these orders and you never set foot in the law. See, come on. That speaks for itself, the idiocy to it. That speaks for itself, how idiotic it is also. You understand what I'm saying? Then you have operative, what they call operative Masons, or people that, and I'm going to apply to all levels of consciousness, whatever spiritual system it is. Then you have those that are actually operative. They're doing the work. They are what they say they are. So when I'm talking, I'm coming from an operative perspective. I work this path. I do this regularly. This is what I do. This is my life, 24/7, 7 days a week. Okay? Manifesting this knowledge, bringing it into existence. Not just reading about it and then talking out my ass as if I know what I'm talking about. Okay? Because you may or may not agree with everything I say, because one, you're entitled to that, and that's your opinion, and that's fine. Two, you may not agree because you just haven't been raised up to the realization of the reality and the truth of it. And I learned that growing up, that a lot of things when I was younger back then, and I was stuck in certain levels of learning that I thought at that time was the deal, and there was nothing outside of that. I would just disregard everything else, claiming it to be wrong because it didn't line up with my personal ideology or spiritual system I was studying at the time. So I'm saying that from experience. I'm not saying that to criticize and down other people. I'm saying that because I was one of those people years back. When I was embedded in a particular spiritual system, if you came at me years ago when I was in my early 20s, late teens, and try to give me some shit to combat what I was dealing with, I would just disregard it as being false knowledge and lies and deceit. And as I said before, I learned now, years later, that a lot of the stuff back then that I thought was wrong, turns out wasn't wrong. A lot of the shit that people were saying in these little Mickey Mouse clubs and groups to stay away from was the stuff I should have gravitated towards, and I didn't. So I was closed-minded. What I'm saying is, you still got that mentality that's abundant amongst the conscious masses to this day, because they're in a specific spiritual system. I don't care what it is. It could be Kemetic studies, it could be Ifa, whatever it is, and they think that there's nothing outside of that that's a reality. So how can you say you're not God? God or goddess can be anything, master it and manifest it. And give you an example. You can be God or goddess and be a Mason. You can be God or goddess and be initiated in Ifa. You can be a God or goddess, be initiated in the Rosicrucian Order, Masonic Lodge, etc. As long as you don't let that define you. You understand? You are all of those things if you choose be, because all of them are manifested through the power of a God and a goddess. That's what it means. It says the path of self-mastery. You take for self, you take that knowledge, you take that experience. If you make that decision to join one of those initiatic orders, and you take from it and benefit from it what need be and master it. Is everything in those orders all wise, right, and exact? Absolutely not. Some of that shit I disregard myself because I see now where they got it from. You understand? Some of it may not apply to you. Some of it might have religious overtones, especially when you get into, again, the Masonic Lodge, especially the Blue House and the Masonic degrees, which are centered around the construction and the building of Solomon's Temple. But I disregard the religious aspect from the biblical, because there's a lot of high alchemy in the Masonic degree. See, I look at it as an alchemist from an Egyptian perspective. As I said before, that temple that you're perfecting in the Masonic Lodge is you. When you walk in the lodge, you're coming in as a rough ashlar. And that's why they have the rough ashlar and the smooth ashlar in the East. You come in as a rough ashlar with imperfections, shit you need to fix about yourself. So part of becoming a Mason, just like in any other esoteric order, is to master yourself, to better yourself. Okay? That's why it was part of those high degrees in the Egyptian mystery system. Okay? Which they call the mystery system. Okay? These were all higher levels of learning and degrees to become a god or a goddess and master self. The occult, the left-hand path, whatever you want to call it, it's the same concept. You're on this path to master self. Okay? What do they call somebody that gets raised up in the third degree of the Blue House? A master Mason. And what it breaks down to is you come in, you come in, birth, death, resurrection, symbolic of the first 3 degrees. Okay, you're raised up on that third degrees, which symbolic of you were mentally dead and now you are awake. Right? You're awoke now. Because you came in, you went through that whole birth and death process. And after you experience birth and death, you are now resurrected. Okay? You are now a god or a goddess. These are what these degrees symbolize. It's what the degrees represented that leaves a lasting impression on the subconscious mind. And that's when you look at through all of these orders, and when you connect it back to consciousness, you can go to the Moors. You can go to Noble Drew Ali in the Circle 7 of the Quran. Noble Drew Ali was part of the Masonic Lodge. Honorable Elijah Muhammad was raised up in the Masonic Lodge. You can go into the Nation of Gods and Earth and see how they break their teachings down into degrees. And there's a good brother I recommend you check out in the 5% Nation of Gods and Earth, a brother that's got a YouTube page that goes by the name of Prince Namor. And he's got a website, Ancient Order of Free Asiatics. And he gets into the whole consciousness aspect of it, of the nation and the gods on earth. But not just that, he connects masonry and the conscious aspect of it. And matter of fact, he did a video a few years back talking about the same thing. I can't remember the video offhand, but you'll see it on his page. Something with masonry. I had watched it about a week or so ago. where he had broke down there's no devil worship or satanic worship in a Masonic lodge, be it a European Masonic lodge, a so-called African Masonic lodge, or whatever. It's just not a reality. And that's coming from individuals that know because they got the experience. So you can't tell somebody, because if you come, for an example, if you come to me and say that, and I tell you, no, that's not true, I went through the laws, and then you get mad and don't want to accept it, what you get mad about? How you get mad about something you can't confirm or you do not know? That's the whole point. And as I said before, there's a disease that plagues this planet called ignorance that's running rampant amongst people. You understand what I'm saying? That's my whole point. So that's why I wanted to touch on this. And again, I get that book from Zachary Gamillion, African Origins of Freemasonry. Let me give you an example what he goes in here. Let's go through some of the table of contents. And I say get this book because this will dispel a lot of the myths. For those that are in the conscious circles and you need to hear it from somebody of African origin on Masonry, this is the book I'd recommend. Okay? Look, let me give you an example. Let's go through the table of the contents of this real quick. The stolen legacy of Africa and how the Greeks stole the knowledge of the ancient Grand Lodge of Egypt. That's a perfect section because that'll give you the whole history. As I said before, anybody that really understands Masonry, and if you're conscious, you know the real origins of Masonry go back to ancient Egypt. Okay? The Masonic link, Freemasonry connected to Africa and the Moorish black families of humanity. Okay? Proof of the origin of the culture and the philosophy of morals among the original man as opposed to the Occidental man. This is the table of contents now. Hermetic knowledge in Kemet, Egypt, Greece, and India. So he even ties it into the Dravidian culture of India and shows you how it branched out, went from Egypt to Greece to India, and he explains how it got here in Europe and America and how it's practiced today and why. And he's gonna dispel all those myths that we're talking about. The duty of a civilized man to teach civilization to the uncivilized. The Africoid brings civilization to the Caucasoid and the rise of the Euro-Aryan civilization. King Solomon, King Hiram, King Tyre, Hiram Abiff, the manifestation of the ancient order in Jerusalem. The building of King Solomon's temple. Egyptian and other forms of temple, the Ark of the Covenant mysteries, misinformation, the Builders Guild and the Stonemason. The individual lodges unite to form the Grand Lodge of England. This is now your formation of how Masonry got to Europe, then America. He's got a whole section in there. It breaks all that down. Masonry comes to America, Europe, then to America. He gets into the Prince Hall, how Prince Hall Lodge came about. So, long story short, he's taking you from ancient Egypt and bringing it all the way up today. Dispelling the myths. And the book gives you other sources you can research. I would recommend somebody that's not a Mason or any part of these esoterical orders. This is a good reference or source to do your research and present your documentation and information. And you will see that as opposed to these speculative Masonic researchers who make stupid ass statements, based on conspiracy theories, you wouldn't be making those theories because you'd have a solid foundation to present your knowledge and show and prove that what you're saying is all wise, right, and exact. And most people are not presenting this topic as all wise, right, and exact. So that's the reason why I did this video, because this topic came up again, and I figured I'd just take a quick minute, take one quick vid to dispel these myths. Unfortunately, it's always been a topic over the years that's been misunderstood because people, as I said before, are ignorant when it comes to this subject because they immediately will throw out devil worship because of the ignorance. Okay, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. So if you come in my presence and make a statement like that, I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you to show and prove and give me some factual information, to validate your point. And again, I would say to you, if you were in a Masonic lodge and that shit took place, I'd tell you to get out of that lodge as quick as you could, because because that's not real masonry. You understand? Let me dispel the myths. On this path, we don't look at what they're calling, or people, it just shows the ignorance level. What people are calling God and the devil are just different manifestations of vibrational energy. We don't look at it like that on this path. We don't look at it like there is a devil in the sense that you have no control over. There's this unforeseen force called God, or some spooky spirit being that has the control over all the courses of your life. You can manifest the power of the devil and God on just as much as you choose, based on how you exercise your will. When I say devil or God, it's just, again, what might be the devil to you is something that's adverse to or not conducive to the things that you're doing on your path, in the sense of what the surface definition of the devil is. Do you understand what that means? Anybody that goes against their true nature becomes adverse to what they are. Okay? And that's going to vary from individual to individual. So we don't look at it like that on this path, the way a religious person would, or the way somebody would separate, differentiate between the two. We look at it as it's connected by different vibrational frequencies of energy. People struggle with that because they still feel the need to separate. They still feel the need to categorize because it makes them feel comfortable. And I think that's what people do when these topics come up about, the occult and Baphomet and masonry. When they don't know about it, it's easy just to write it off and say it's devil worship. So now in their mind, they feel like, they've given themselves some justification, when really all they've done is spark it with more ignorance. So that madness has got to stop. So again, I hope this video clarified, again, this illusion about, what masonry is and the occult and its connection. And again, I ask anybody to show me in any of these books, show me one degree in any of these books where there is, quote unquote, this mythological satanic ritual. Can't do it. How do I know? I know for a fact you can't do it. Okay? You must show and prove, not just say it. And it's going to be hard for you to do that if you've never belonged to any of these orders. It's going to be hard for you to do it. And this is why you'll have another group of people to say, oh, well, you don't need to be a part of that. This is what it is. Come on, man. I mean, that ignorance speaks for itself. That's because they're trying to take the attention off themselves and try to make it look like, well, it's not important. Well, if you're a true master, if you're a true god or a goddess, as I said earlier, a god or a goddess masters all the knowledge in the universe. Does all the knowledge in the universe. A god is nothing a god or a goddess does not study and master. That's the difference. You don't pick and choose what you want, and then because you like something, you say, I'm this, and anything else outside of that is not truth. That's nonsense. So anyway, I hope this dispels the myth on this subject. And again, it was sparked by this conversation I had yesterday, which I thought was interesting. And it was all, peace when it was said and done. But every now and then, you gotta pull out that sword and go to work, and that happens here and there. And them days, like I said, I did that shit for years. Them days is over for me, unless need be. Sometimes you awaken, the warrior energy, unfortunately, and it comes out. You gotta put shit into its perspective, because one thing I can't sit there and listen to is bullshit and lies. When somebody is, we used to call it back in the day, moosing. They're moosing their way through something. And what it basically means is when somebody's moosing their way through something, they don't know what they're talking about. You can just hear it. You can hear it by what they're saying. Not only can you hear it in what they're saying, you can just look at them and tell. And that's what we don't want to do. So I hope this video clarified that. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.